We continue in Masechet Soferim, the 18th chapter. The previous halacha that we studied was regarding the customs of taking the children to the Bet Knesset, to teach them and to get them accustomed to the environment of the synagogue. But now he goes back to the author goes back to the halachot of Tisha B'Av, because that is where he veered off from Tisha B'Av to the laws of the fast day, and that people would make their kids fast at a young age, and then you bring it to the synagogue, and now finally, after this digression, detour, we go back. It says, "V'hakoreh omer baruch dayan ha'emet." The one who reads the Torah, we don't do it today, says Baruch Dayan HaEmet. The way you say when, God forbid, someone passes away, and you do the Kiri'ah, you tear your clothes, we say Baruch Atah Shalom Dayan HaEmet. We acknowledge that God is the justice of truth, and we accept the verdict. So the people would say it on Tisha B'Av. So this is something that over the generations have been abandoned. There are in general some laws of Avilut that God willing, we finish Soferim, we'll go to a Masechet called Masechet Smachot that deals with the practice of Avelut. There are many customs of Avelut, of mourning, that are mentioned in the Talmud that we don't do today. Part of it is because of the culture has changed, and the way people display or express their emotions has changed. So, for example, they used to do something called Halitzat Katef. They would pull their robes from over their shoulder all the way to the elbow. That's called Halitzat Katef. The people who would carry the coffin would go Halutzei Katef. We don't do it today. There was also something called Aituf, that people would wrap their head with their robes that you can't see, you only see the eyes. That's from the pasuk Ve'al Safam Ya'teh Ve'tamet HaMeikra, just like the Metzorah covers his face. The Kiri'ah was not the Kiri'ah that we do today, when you only do a slit and you tear it partially. People would completely tear their clothes, and in some cases would tear and remove the upper part of their garments to the extent the coat and everything. And that's why the Navi in the book of Zechariah, the Navi speaks about a great disaster that will happen at the end of days. It's called Misped Hadadrimon Bevikat Megidon, and it says Ve'asu lo Evel Gadol. There will be a great mourning and eulogy, and the whole nation will be mourning. Mishpachot. Each family in its own place. Mishpachat Bet David levad u'neshehem levad. And the Navi goes on to specify that the men will be sitting and mourning on their own, separately, and the women separately. Some people wanted to learn from here that even during eulogy, you have to have separation. Well, the truth is really that at the time, people would tear their upper garments, and they would be exposed. So that was why women would be sitting separately, and men would be sitting separately. Anyway, on Tisha B'Av also was very intense.
And flipping the bed.
Flipping the bed, kifiyat amita. It's not like the small chairs, but rather the beds were frames of wood with the ropes tied in between them. So kifiyat amita was you let go of those ropes, you untie them, and they fall to the ground, or you turn the bed upside down and you sit on it. We don't do all these things today. And on Tisha B'Av also, as we sort of moved away from Tisha B'Av, the intensity of the fast and the mourning has diminished. It's picked up every time there was a disaster, like after the Holocaust. You go people, but coming back to Eretz Israel, there's a letdown. So those are things that fluctuate.
You said the restarted the Crusades.
Crusades, yes, definitely. After the Crusades, everything went up. Even Lag BaOmer, the 3 weeks. The 3 weeks is a product of the Crusades also. So a lot of this was affected, by this disastrous event. With Tisha B'Av, there was another reason why the halacha eventually diminished some of the practices of Avelut of Tisha B'Av, and that is that the Karaite Jews were more strict with all the halachot of Tisha B'Av. The Karaite Jews were the Jews who rejected the oral tradition and the interpretation that the rabbis gave to the Torah. So we believe that this oral tradition is a tradition that was passed from one master to another all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu. Karaite Jews said, no, this is something that was made up by the rabbis in the first, second century. We are free to interpret the Torah the way we want. And the founder of the Karaite movement, Anan ben David, in the 7th, 8th century, was so adamant on the idea that there's no tradition that he told his students, don't follow my teachings. He said, I'm interpreting the Torah one way. If you come and find a different way to interpret it, you're welcome. So for example, they would say, don't cook a kid in its mother's milk, only the kid in its mother's milk. Well, in the milk of another animal, it's okay. But on the other hand, they said also you cannot eat meat after the destruction. So then problem with all. So the rabbis, rabbinic Judaism, our traditional Judaism, tried to keep away from them as much as possible. And in some cases, they caused damage to rabbinic Judaism. Rav Saadia Gaon was famous in conducting his argument against them. He actually wrote the book of Sefer Emunot V'Deot. His book of philosophy was written primarily to refute the arguments of the Karaites. So the Karaites, one of the things that they were very obsessed with was mourning for the destruction. Since they were more they saw themselves as temple-based, because of the Torah speaks about the sacrifice. To them, the replacements that were suggested by the rabbis, substitutes by the tefillot and all that, were not enough. They wanted to go back to Yerushalayim and build the temple and live there. So there was a sect among the Karaites called Avelei Zion, who would mourn for Yerushalayim the whole year. Mm-hmm. They would dress in black, they would sit every night, and the rabbis wanted to distinguish between our practices and theirs, and therefore slowly the minagei avelut on Tisha B'Av, the practice of mourning, were diminished. So we don't do that. We don't say Baruch Dayan Haemet on Tisha B'Av. Ve'yesh shemanichim et haTorah al hakarka ba'atifa shechora ve'omer nafla ateret roshenu. Some people place the Torah on the ground, wrapped in black cloth, and they say, Nafla ateret roshenu, our crown has fallen to the ground. How do we do it today? Today, there are different customs. I've seen in some places that the teva is covered on Tisha B'Av with black parochet. Have you ever seen that? You've seen that? Spanish, Portuguese, do they do that?
I don't remember. I've seen some places.
Yeah, I've seen that. So the teva is covered with a black cloth, with a black parochet.
But there's no ashes.
Yes, and there was also the custom of placing ashes on your head, and people still do it on Sodam of Seket, that in the yeshiva it was just cigarettes. You mix into the.
People do it at Chatuna also.
Yes, but that's also has been abandoned long ago. But I've seen the first time that I was at Tisha B'Av in my Iraqi congregation in LA. It was the Hazan there was born in India. It was the Iraqi Jews who went to India, and he did a custom that I've never seen. I've seen the intense mourning of the Iraqi shuls in Yerushalayim. I know from my grandfather what they did, but I've never seen that. And I stopped him I said that it bothers me to see that when he took the Torah out of the Echal, he covered it with the black. He wrapped it with a black cloth, and he took it. And I said, please remove that. And now I know that it's written, that there is a source that says that, but the fact that people throughout the ages abandon it, you don't have to go back to it. We have to understand that with all the destruction in Tisha B'Av, we are 2,000 years later, we had made progress. However, here they say that you place the scroll of the Torah on the ground with only the separation of the cloth. It was really extreme measure. We still do today. We put the scroll or the Sefer Torah on the teva. Like I said, some covered with black cloth, the teva itself. And we do say Nafla ateret roshenu, our crown has fallen, but we don't put it there. וקוראים ומספידים כאדם שמתו מוטל לפניו. And the reading and there is a eulogy. Masbidim, this is before you had established kinot. Now we have a liturgy that was written mainly in the Golden Age in Spain. So after 200-300 years after this is written, what he says is korinu masbidim. You say eulogy, meaning that it was either spontaneous or improvised. Every year, the rabbi or the leader of the community will do a eulogy about the Torah, about the Beit HaMikdash, a sermon. Ke'adam shemeto mutal lefanav. So they would create the atmosphere of a funeral. The Torah, as if it were, is the deceased. It's on the floor, wrapped in black, and the rabbi says a eulogy. This is quite shocking, right? ויש שמשנים את מקומן, ויש שיורדים מספסליהם למטה. Some people move to another place in the synagogue, which is still customary in some communities, that when the Avel comes to the synagogue, he doesn't sit in the same place, in his regular place. He moves. I saw that in the certain community. It's customary to right. So it's customary that during the week you do the Shiva at home. On Shabbat you come to the synagogue. Now on Shabbat, the concept is you don't display Avelut mourning in public on Shabbat. It's disrespectful for Shabbat. So what they do, the person just sits somewhere else. So it's not mourning. So he sits in a different seat, and everybody goes and sits next to him for a couple of minutes. So there's like commotion in the synagogue, but very respectfully, everybody goes and sits next to him, and it's nice. It's a sense of community, of camaraderie. And some go from their safsal. That safsal is a bench. Not everybody had a bench in the synagogue, or a chair in the synagogue at that time. We're talking about the 7th, 8th century in Baghdad. That's the time of the Geonim. Most of the synagogues had rugs and mats and stuff like that. People would sit on the floor. The important people would have their own chairs. Today, we're a democratic society. All the chairs in the synagogue, they're all equal. Maybe someone has a pillow here or there. Even though I think my first congregation, there was the Gavir, like the wealthiest person in the synagogue was in Israel. And people were sort of like middle income. But there was one man who lived in London, also from the Iraqi Indian community, and would come back and forth once in a while. So it was like the Gavir, the great donor in the synagogue. So he had, in the middle of the row where we were sitting, his assigned seat, he bought a special chair that was a little bigger and a little higher and well padded. Everybody knows, like a king who sits there. So he says here, Yesh Yodim, those who have safsalim, those who have their chairs, would come down and sit on the floor, which we still do today for part of the tefillah. V'chulam mitpaleshim ba'efer, and they all roll in ashes. Like you mentioned before, that there was a custom back then. Today, what is left of the custom of ashes is only based on the pasuk in Tehillim. Lechem ka'efer ka'lechem achalti, v'shikuvai bivchi masachti. I ate ashes like I eat bread, and I mix my drink with tears. So some do it literally. The tears is more difficult to do, but I know of great rabbis who used to do that. They used to cry into a cup of water and then drink it. And ashes is a little more complicated. They would take from the ovens, the ancient ovens, some ashes and spread it over the food. And like I said, when I was in yeshiva, some of my friends would do that, and basically just would smoke a cigarette and spread the ashes over boiled egg and eat it.
Like if you go to acting school, they teach you how to.
Yeah. No, when I was in I think in school, I knew how to do that.
Really?
Yeah. To get the teachers sympathy, to cry. No, I don't know how to do it. It dried out. I don't know how to do it. ואין אומרים שלום זה לזה כל הלילה וכל היום עד שישלימו עם קנאותיהם. And people don't greet each other the whole night and the whole day of Tisha B'Av. which is also the halakha regarding avelut, regarding mourning. But again, this is something that people have to be aware of today. The social norms have changed. Not everybody is aware of that halakha. So when you come to the synagogue, let's say on Tisha B'Av, and someone says shalom, don't ignore him and walk away. If someone greets you, you greet them back, because obviously they don't know that practice. Same thing with an avel. Someone comes into a house. When I was sitting shiva for my mother, Zechona Livracha, someone came and he greeted me and I greeted him back. And a guy next to me says, "No, you don't greet him back." He says, "Don't tell him that's what I have to do. If otherwise, he doesn't know the halacha. I would see him as rude, and it's Hilul Hashem." And it says, "בשעת הקינות אסור לספר דבר ולצאת לחוץ כדי שלא יפסיק ליבו מן האבלות, וכל שכן לנסוח עם אנוכי." During the time of the kinot, of the eulogy or the liturgy that is read in the synagogue, one should not talk of, have idle talk or get out, to be focused on mourning, and he cannot talk to a non-Jew. So this is the day that you're fully focused on. If you know how this evolved in many communities, people couldn't really stay in the synagogue for the whole morning of Tisha B'Av. It was too long. And in some communities in Europe, among the Ashkenazim, it was actually a practice that evolved among children to throw little stones or little pebbles or dry fruits on, not fruits, non-edible fruits that grew in case darechet or something in Europe on the mitpalelim. It became such a burden that they found ways to distract themselves. Other people, instead of sitting in the synagogue for Tisha B'Av, would go to the cemetery. You know this minhag of going to the cemetery on Tisha B'Av?
We used to have it here.
You used to have it, right?
After the services,
go to the right. When I was in Sderot, in the yeshiva in Sderot, all the students of the yeshiva, we would go on Tisha B'Av after Shachrit to the cemetery, because the whole city, everybody would come to visit their grave. So we were there to help with the Kaddishim and prayers and all that. Finally, it says, "בתפילת ערבית אין אדם שומע על חברו מפני שמתפללים בלחישה ואין אומרים לא ברכו ולא יהי שם." It says in the Arvit of Tisha B'Av is all said in low voice. So the Hazan doesn't lead the services really. It's as if you're praying beyachid. Aval. Now we are moving to Perek Tisha Asar, and with that we finish the halachot of Tisha B'Av. אבל בתפילת שחרית אחר המזמורים והפסוקים האלו אומר ביוצר ברכו בקול נמוך. In the morning, when תפילת שחרית, you could say ברכו את השם מבורך. Again, softly, you don't raise your voice. I know that this is the way we, meaning the Iraqi community, this is how Hazanut is done with Tisha B'Av. It's done with, there is a Hazan, he leads the services, but with no tune, as if just chanting it, like, as if you're reading the newspaper. But the way it is mentioned here, Masechet Soferim, En mazkirim kadosh ve'af lo kaddish. Up until Minha, there's no kaddish, there's no kedusha. It's just a lot of people in the synagogue, which is a community, but they pray beyachid. So that is meant to show that we are fragmented and broken, and we cannot pray together. We cannot say kedusha and kaddish. אבל בתפילת המנחה אומר קדוש וקדיש. But תפילת המנחה, מנחה of Tisha B'Av during the day, is the time when we start emerging out of the Avelut, and we say Kadosh and Kaddish, and the Tefillah is led in loud voice. And that's also when we say Nahamu Nahamu Ami, comfort and console my nation. We read those Pesukim that are called Pesukei Nehama, verses of consolation. Baruch Adonai, Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.